Hello, everyone. Welcome back to The Lobby, GameSpot's weekly hangout here at 2 p.m. Pacific in sunny San Francisco. I'm Mike Mahardy, your host. Back for the first time in, 2 weeks, was it?
2 years.
2 years. From
Mike Mahardy's been dead this whole time.
From, like a soul walk in Asia, kind of, across that continent?
I walked on the soles of my feet.
That's Pete Brown.
Hi.
That was
Dr.
walking
Pete
his
Brown.
feet. Yeah, and this is Scott Butterworth.
Hello.
We're going to bring Scott on. We have a lot to talk about today. We are going to talk about Civ, the review, Titanfall 2, which I reviewed, Dark Souls 3 DLC, Final Fantasy 15, the first 15 hours, or however long they played. But first, we want to get into something kind of newsworthy. Bethesda, Gary Steinman, the global content lead on Bethesda's blog, just released something that's of interest to us three especially, who review games a lot. Pete, you're the reviews editor. Bethesda was saying, early in the year, Doom, we got review copy, a day early? Mm-hmm. And people were speculating maybe that means the game itself is going to, suck or whatever they were saying on Twitter. And it turned out to be a really good game, and that, kind of led to more conversations around. I know, 2K, the publisher, our last few releases hasn't really given us the games that early in advance at all. So it's kind of, as reviewers, doesn't give us as much time, but a lot of people keep thinking this means that, these games are not going to be great because they're not giving the reviewers 2 weeks in advance to play them.
Right.
But no, Bethesda's just saying that's just how it works now. Do you want to talk about that a little bit? Did you read through the blog post? I have it up now. I can kind of quote it if you want. But
yeah, throw a quick quote out there. I think just to sort of give their aim.
So on the blog it says, with the upcoming launches of Skyrim Special Edition and Dishonored 2, both of which Bethesda will be publishing, we will continue our policy of sending media review copies one day before release. While we will continue to work with the media, streamers, and YouTubers to support their coverage both before and after release, we want everyone, including those in the media, to experience our games at the same time.
Right. Okay, so yes, people might assume these games are bad, but when a company says all our games are going to be handled this way, that immediately doesn't really make sense, that kind of conclusion. The best conclusion you could really make here is that I don't think these companies are scared of bad reviews, but I think that they are willing to take sort of more of the control over the messaging around something, be it good or bad. And yeah, it can suck for a lot of reasons for us as reviewers, given that it's our job. And it definitely can suck for a lot of consumers who rely on reviews to buy games. There's no question this doesn't do anything for the consumer. This is a thing that really just benefits Bethesda. So you may see it change some of the ways that games are reviewed, because obviously we can't review a 20-hour game after one day. So there'll be maybe some different types of coverage around that. We've got to figure that out. And Bethesda might follow suit, or other companies might follow in Bethesda's footsteps. So who knows? But I think it's interesting to say the least, and will certainly make our jobs very different.
Yeah, because I was going to say, looking back at recent examples, Scott, you reviewed both of these games.
Mafia earlier this month and Civ just this past weekend, basically.
Both of which were published by 2K, and so that's kind of there's a shocking disparity between them, because Mafia 3, for as many good things as it did, we talked about it a lot, but you gave it a 6, and I think overall, just regardless of the scores, it was very much it was kind of on the lower end, especially technical value. So that's kind of one of the games that people would assume would be released or given us code the day before. But then Civ 6 comes out and you loved it. We're going to talk about it briefly, the score itself briefly in a little bit. But across the board, people are really liking it. They say it's one of the better entries in the series and whatnot. So there's kind of a huge juxtaposition between those, and you kind of saw in terms of time management, you saw the hard end of both of those.
As Pete pointed out, we can't review certain games, given 1 day lead time. Civ is way too big, and Mafia, it turned out, was a 40-hour game as well. So trying to review that in a day is quite literally impossible. There just aren't enough hours in the day, as the saying goes. But also, as you just pointed out, the disparity between the qualities of Civ and Mafia sort of calls into question that prevailing narrative that, getting a game late means it's going to be bad. Because in Mafia's case, there were definitely some technical problems on every platform. So that kind of validated that theory, right? That, if you get it late, it means it's going to be bad. But Civ, aside from a few problems maybe with the AI, which I experienced less than other people actually, but aside from that, there were no real problems. The game is great. There was no real reason for them to hold back in terms of concerns about quality. They had to have known that it was a really good game, and it is.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm actually with Pete that I think that, I don't know, to me, this decision by Bethesda doesn't necessarily serve consumers, but at the same time, I think it just reflects natural shifts in the landscape. YouTubers and that type of thing, it's a thing now, right? The media is not the only option for games coverage. Sure. So us not getting the games as early as we used to, in my mind, is just a reflection of the times and the way things work. And I don't know, it was always a privilege to get games ahead of time. They're a commercial product. We were very fortunate to get stuff early, but I don't think we were ever entitled to that. So,
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
I mean-
look at, can I just interject
Yeah,
real quick?
go.
If you look at Final Fantasy 15, right? Like, we got access to like over a dozen hours of that game, like a month ahead of launch. That's pretty beefy for a preview. So
Yeah.
maybe this will just change the way that previews are handled.
Yeah,
Which
and
could be a good thing.
Sure, and then looking back at 2K with both, and this is both for Axis games as well, with Civ 6 and XCOM 2, we both essentially had, for both of those, I reviewed XCOM 2, Scott, you did Civ 6, we essentially had access to almost the whole game, minus like, I forget, like a few features in XCOM 2,
Right.
and of course you can't review it based on those builds alone because they don't have everything that could kind of change the formula. They also, like Civ didn't have all the leaders possible, but still, like you said, maybe that's changing how coverage is done. People will probably see more reviews in progress a little more often. Well, obviously with Bethesda games and with 2K games. Like EA recently, we've done a couple EA reviews recently. Titanfall 2 I just did, and I did the event, and that was well in advance of the review embargo yesterday. Activision had a Call of Duty event recently, and our review hasn't even gone up yet. So we have time with certain publishers, and I don't know, it's just kind of, like you said, an indicator of how things are changing.
EA does its own weird thing though with EA Early Access. Like that's for Battlefield, and I mean, it goes up the week ahead of its stated launch, but only for people who subscribe to EA Access. But of course, we can do that, and so it's weird. Every publisher does it in different ways, but clearly it's changing for everybody.
And then, like, not to mention betas and alphas and stress tests and closed alphas and closed betas and whatnot.
Yeah.
But
You mentioned them.
I know. Anyway, okay, cool. So let's get right into the game we were just talking about, Civilization 6.
Yep.
Scott, your full review is up. We did like an Ask the Reviewer type thing about a week ago when you first got it. You seemed pretty positive on it. You said it had some annoyances, but your review is now up. I want to talk briefly about the score before we get into like the segment itself, which is like, where does this fall in the grand scheme of the Civilization series, which is 25 years old as of like last month or something. But what led you to give this a 9 score? Why do you like this game so much?
That's a big question. I spent a lot of words answering that question. It's tough. And actually, it was a bit tricky to score. I definitely considered giving it an 8 at certain points simply because there are some frustrations with it. I mean, there's some things about the UI that still really annoy me, and the AI opponent in single player are definitely not perfect. I didn't have nearly as much trouble with them as certain people in our comments who were like, it's broken, the game is, I can't even play it, which was not my experience, even if occasionally the AI would do stupid things. But setting that aside, I even those issues never stopped me from wanting to continue playing. It is just such an engrossing experience, and discovering all of the nuances that have been added since Civ 5 and learning all about the big changes, which we've discussed at length previously, including like unstacking the cities and active research and agendas for leaders. I mean, all these big changes make it really fascinating to me as a longtime Civ fan.
For someone who's not super familiar with the franchise, because like everything you just said makes sense to me because I love the franchise.
Right.
And people that really want to play this and have been waiting for it for months, or like, because they didn't even announce it until about May or June. They
Something
kind of
like
said, hey, this is Civ 6, the next numbered entry. It's not Beyond Earth. It's not an expansion. This is the next numbered entry. It's coming out in 4 months. It's not always the case. But for someone who doesn't really understand the franchise and like is considering getting into it, is Civ 6 a good entry point?
I would say it is, actually, yeah. I don't think that any of the games are any better or worse a place to jump in, because no matter where you start, Civ is a bit demanding. I was actually talking to Jake Decker, one of our video producers, who was just playing Civ for the first time. She started with Civ 6. And I think that starting in the series, there is a pretty daunting learning curve, because there are a lot of systems at play and there's a lot to just remember and manage in any given playthrough. That said, though, I think that Civ 6 does an elegant job of inserting its new ideas in a way that makes sense, that slots naturally into the structure. And the overall structure of the game is very understandable. I mean, you're establishing a civilization, right? And you're taking it very slowly, step by step, from a single settler and a single warrior up through the space age, right? So every match evolves very gradually. And so if you take your time and you're willing to put in the hours into a full playthrough, by the end of that first playthrough, I feel like anybody will have a firm grasp of what the game is like and what it entails. And that remains true for Civ 6. And there is a full tutorial for Civ 6 as well that's like fully voiced and pretty brisk, and I think it really will help new players. So in my mind, this is a great place to start if you've never played a Civ game.
Yeah, and that's the thing that's tough with these kind of games. And we did a recent video shoot at for Axis in Maryland, and a lot of them expressed the same sentiment that it's a series that they almost nailed the formula back with, like, I mean, even like Civ 3, the last game with its like sprites before it went to like 3D with Civ 4, like that far back. It's almost like they nailed that board game / simulation kind of turn-based, one more turn formula. So with each entry, it's all like, what features are they going to change? Obviously, unstacking the cities, whereas they used to be on one tile. Now you're like spreading them across multiple districts on different hex tiles. But like active research becomes this side quest kind of thing, almost with the science that can boost and like maybe turn you in a different direction or like boost like the path you're going down. But it's almost like, where does Civ 6 fall in the pantheon of Civ games in terms of like the improvements they've made? Because Civ 5 released and it was imperfect. Well, as most things are, but Civ 5 release was really good, but there were a lot of things wrong with it. But then, Gods and Kings and Brave New World came out with the expansion, and it's like, this is the game Civ 5 should have been. Like, can you see them making certain changes to 6 that'll like kind of maybe make it like, not like objectively, but a really good game in the series?
Well, so this is a pretty big question and a difficult question to answer, especially within the first week of the game's release, because as you pointed out, Civ games have a habit of growing pretty substantially after release. So inevitably, I think there will be a lot of big changes and big additions to 6 that we haven't yet seen. And honestly, there's still plenty of stuff about the base game that I'm still coming to grips with and learning about and figuring out how it all kind of connects together. But I will say that the base game, I think, as I said in the review, I think Civ 6 is the strongest base game Civilization's ever released. It is certainly stronger than Civ 5 was when it first came out. Civ 5 was actually pretty bare bones in a lot of ways when it first released, and the DLC that came later fleshed it out into this really rich and deep experience. So arguably the best Civ experience you can have is Civ 5 plus all of the expanded content. I think Civ 6 actually kind of matches that experience in a lot of ways, but it'll kind of boil down to preference. I mean, I think with every new civilization, there's a certain set of players who remain behind and continue to play the experience they know and the experience they love. And honestly, that's fine. It's kind of a matter of taste, because 6 really does change a lot of things, and not everybody's going to love those things. So saying it's best is like such a hopelessly subjective thing. So I think that 6 is great. I think it's the strongest base game for sure. I think there's stuff that they could add to make it even stronger. But I think that veterans will find stuff that makes it feel new and fresh and is genuinely exciting. And like I said before, I think it's a good entry point for new players as well.
Sure, and it was like fascinating to look at, because the team that made the expansions for 5 is the team that made 6. So it's like Ed Beach, lead designer. These are the people that like kind of almost like really iterated on 5 to the point of like you said with Brave New World and Gods and Kings. This is kind of that itself as it exists now might be one of the better objective entries in the series.
And you can see a lot of those ideas in 6 already. You can see that 6 doesn't really follow 5. It follows the expansions, right? It feels like the next logical progression from that point, not from the last base game.
Like the espionage is intact from the expansions, right? That kind of system.
Yeah, and social policies as well have been kind of like revamped, but are similar to how they were in the expansions.
Yeah.
And those ideas came a bit later. So a lot of stuff like that has been, expanded upon and included in the base game that was not present at all in the base version of Civilization 5.
So how many hours have you put in by now?
Ooh, about 60, something like that, since last Thursday.
So that's like what, 4 or 5 complete matches?
About 4.
Okay.
So I won with every possible win condition, which is well, actually, one of my first game was technically a score victory. So it's culture, science, religion, and domination. The 4 ways you can win. So I pursued all of those. The first time I actually didn't successfully complete a science thing. I was very near the end, but ran out of time and just won through score.
Yeah.
But I had been pursuing science in that first playthrough.
A few months ago, when we had the preview build, and I think one of us, I saw it at Judges Week back during the summer. I've played a fair amount of this game, even though I haven't played that much post-release. But you and I had a conversation about how it kind of avoids that boring mid-game. How does the flow of each match? I kind of talked to you during the Ask a Reviewer, but I want to touch on that for people who might not have seen it, because now it's fully up. The review, 9 out of 10. You really love this game, but how does the actual flow of each match go from the beginning to end? Because the beginning 150 turns are always the ones where you're to me they're the most fun, and to most people they're the most fun. That's when you're planning things out, fighting barbarians, kind of discovering other civilizations, natural wonders, the villages that give you gifts and whatnot. How does each playthrough kind of progress? Do you ever get bored in a specific spot each time?
Not in the same spot each time. There are certain things with science that kind of it drags out a little bit at the end, because you're just waiting finish researching this particular space thing that I need to win the game, and you're just waiting for the turns to pass, right? But I think that in previous Civilization games, there was always kind of a point where you could mentally check out a bit, at least for a little while in the middle, as you waited for your big picture decisions to pan out. I think I used that exact phrase in the review, actually. But this time around, I think unstacked cities, which you mentioned earlier, help keep you engaged throughout. One of the biggest changes, at least, that the unstacked cities bring is there's no longer a global happiness and food level. Instead, it's managed on a local basis, which means you have to pay a lot more attention to individual cities, which is both not tedious, but definitely demanding, but it also creates a lot of opportunities for strategic gain. So even though you are investing time in this new way, it actually can pay off, and it does keep you invested. It does keep you immersed in the experience more deeply because each turn matters. There's something that you have to accomplish on any given turn that can contribute to your overall goals. It's no longer just, okay, I got to wait for this technology to finish researching so that I can then move forward. There's always something in the immediate turn you can be doing to improve your chances.
There's always this weird disconnect, to talk like bigger picture for a second. Civilization's been around for 25 years, since 1991, and despite the fact that if we went to the GameSpot office right now and said like how many people want to play Civ 6, I'm sure a lot of people would want to try it out, but like I think like in terms of diehard people that have been sticking with it, there's me, there's you, there's probably a few others, but it still seems sort of niche, even though it's one of the biggest names in like turn-based strategy. In a lot of ways, they have shaped the 4X strategy genre and influenced like even real-time strategy in some respects. I don't know, like Pete, have you ever been interested in or played this series that much?
I've played a few 4X games before that I've really enjoyed. I played like early Civ, Endless Space a few years ago. I thought was pretty awesome. And I really want to play Civ 6 as much as I really wanted to play Civ 5. Because my hobby is my job, so much of my time is spent playing games. I just don't have that much time to play something like Civ 6 to really like sit down and dedicate all those extra hours, which is unfortunate, but I definitely want to play it. But I can imagine how for a lot of people, Civ might feel too intimidating in terms of like, I can't wrap my head around this immediately. Like, I know what a first-person shooter is. I know what a platformer is. I can imagine that Civ is this complicated simulation game, but do I really know what that means? Do I really want to take, I want to take the effort to figure that out. But I can imagine for a lot of people why that might seem like almost a chore in and of itself. To get started.
Yeah, I mean, like in recent months and years, we've kind of stopped looking at addicting games as a good thing.
Sure.
Like I think in old reviews, if you read them, you say this game's addicting as hell. It's like 9 out of 10. Like this, you need to play this. But Civ, like despite how boring it can sound, the fact that you're macro and micromanaging this civilization from the beginning of time to the future, it really is. That's like their mantra is one more turn. And like it's hard to like really get bored when there's always something to worry about, like a new research to complete. A new building to finish, like in this case, a new district to build. Like your city's going to be unfolding. You could build the Sphinx, you could build the pyramids and whatnot. It's always kind of been really fun to me for whatever reason, but it's always hard. You explain it well in your review why it is fun and engaging, but again, like this series is like so intimidating. It's crazy. It's been around for 25 years. Like not many series have. It's like I don't know. Like there's Mario, there's Zelda, stuff like that. But I don't know. Like Civ 6. Like in your opinion, you said this kind of matches up with the version of Civ 5 as it is now.
I mean, I would say so, yeah. It is ultimately, like I said, completely subjective because there are enough big changes to 6 that not everyone who loves 5 in the expansions is necessarily going to love 6. But in terms of like feature richness and the way in which it all slots together and sort of the logic driving all of the interlocking systems of the game, yeah, it's like an incredibly robust experience. There's so much to sink your teeth into, a phrase that I really hate. I don't know why that came out of my mouth, but there's just so much for your brain to absorb and to think about, and just there's so many wheels turning at any given time that, yeah, I think people who are willing to put in the time, which the game does demand, are going to be completely engrossed. And to me, that the level of investment of 6 does rival what I experienced with 5 in the expansions.
So to be completely subjective, for you, is this the best Civ game you've ever played?
This is certainly my favorite Civ game. Okay. Yes.
Cool.
And I've spent, I opened the review with talking about like playing the original Civilization with my dad. It came out when I was 5 years old, but I remember being like, oh, catapults are awesome. You know, I didn't really understand the game, but I understood enough that I kept playing it. It's weird. I'm like more nostalgic about Civ than I am about Mario, which is weird for someone my age, but completely true for whatever reason.
Definitely. Yeah, so that's Civ 6. It is released as of Friday, the 21st. We gave it a 9 out. Scott, you gave it a 9 out of 10. Our full review is up on GameSpot along with a video review if you want to check that out. Go read that. Go watch it. Let us know what you think in the comments below. Scott, I'm going to have to boot you off. Thanks so much for coming on and talking Civ yet again. Appreciate it.
Bye. Hi.
What's up, dude? It's been so long. I forgot what you looked like almost.
Lots of hair.
I've been cat sitting your cat.
You
Kenji.
were. You stayed at my place.
The cutest punk I've ever met in my life. He's quite a handful.
He's a cute guy.
You talking about DK?
Talking about my cat.
Yeah.
His cat, Kenji. This is Matt Espinelli.
Hi.
How's it going, Matt? What have you been up to?
Not much. Just been working on Final Fantasy 15 related content.
Oh, shit. Well, coincidentally, we're going to talk about that.
Yeah, that's true.
Final Fantasy 15, you and a few other people got the chance to play it, the preview build, which was pretty massive from my understanding, but you specifically played 15 hours, like the first 5 chapters. Like, walk us through what you got the chance to check out.
So it was the first 5 chapters, which technically is about like give or take around 12-ish hours.
Okay.
But like I spent a few hours doing a lot of like side content. So yeah, it just starts you off in the beginning of the game and throws you off right into the open world, basically. Yeah.
Yeah, so I don't really know the series all that well. I mean, I know it like in passing enough to like understand why it's important and why people love it. But correct me if I'm wrong. This is the first like truly open world Final Fantasy. Is that incorrect or is that misleading?
It depends on how you look at it.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, you probably, from what I understand, you can't just go anywhere from the start.
Yeah,
But
that's true.
But it's big, like in the way that the MMOs are big, right? Like, if you're strong enough, if you have the abilities, you can get there. So,
Okay.
yeah.
But you did say like pretty soon after you started, you were in like just an open world, right?
Yeah, that's what's different, I want to say, compared to a lot of the other previous Final Fantasies that have had similar sort of qualities to it. You're literally thrown into the open world within the first 10 minutes, which, was Final Fantasy 13. That took well over like 20 or so hours or so. I mean, like 30, 40, I don't even know. But
That's a long intro.
but yeah, I think that's sort of the most distinct quality of it.
Did it feel like there's a lot to do, or was it kind of you? I remember I read your preview. We were editing it, and you said there's a lot of fetch quests. Was there a lot of substance to the quests you were doing, or was it just kind of running around, fetching things for people, getting tasks done?
Yeah, see, that's the thing. Like there are a lot of side quests that emerge besides sort of the main stuff that you get to do. Most of those, they do follow a very standard fetch quest format. Sometimes a little too much, where it's like, hey, go to point A, get this thing, go to point B, give it to that person, and then go back to point A in order to complete the quest. And some quests don't really add that much in terms to the overall sort of context of the conflict that takes place in the game. So it can be a little like it doesn't really feel like
There's not a ton of substance to everything.
yeah, a ton of substance,
Sure.
so to say. Yeah.
Can you walk me through the world itself? It's such a weird. I mean, I know Final Fantasy always kind of does this, but it's like this weird amalgamation of like magic and weird like
Fantasy and reality.
Highway 69 diners and cars and boys in leather. I don't know.
69 diners and boys in leather. What is
Highway
going on
60,
here?
66.
Yeah, I
60
know.
Is that the one?
Yeah,
60
it's Route 66.
Sorry,
there you go,
mine's
man.
in the gutter. Jesus.
I love the 69 diner as much as the next bloke.
So how does this world feel to you, Matt, to avoid Pete's conversation?
As you said, there's a lot of, I guess the way to describe it, it's very inspired by sort of Americana, kind of like, having a lot of sort of these pit stop areas. You're on basically the aesthetic of the game is very much a road trip. So that's kind of what leads you through the story. Sorry.
Yeah, the world itself is like, I mean, it's a weird kind of, like you said, it's like this road trip thing. I always got like, I remember the first trailer is kind of like that Stand By Me cover by that girl. I didn't get the aesthetic they're going for at all. I've been
Right.
trying to pay attention to Final Fantasy 15, but it seems like they're going for so many different things. Did the world feel like connected to you? Did it feel engaging? Do you want to go back and see more of this world now that you played like 15 hours of it?
Very much so. That's the thing. Like, there's a lot to do. There really is. It's a very big game, and a lot of the stuff that you get to do really emerges organically for the most part, despite some of the fetch quest nature of the side activities you get to do. But there's just so many different places to explore, a lot of activities to do besides, even just fetch quests, of course. You could just like hop on a chocobo and explore, and that's what I really like about the game. It has a very distinct quality compared to other Final Fantasies.
Yeah, like what's this? Like for me, a good Final Fantasy game has a certain spark to it that like when you play it, you're like, yeah, this is Final Fantasy. Like no other series kind of attaches such importance to like a weird quirk. Like what is the quirk that makes this feel like legitimately Final Fantasy? Like it can't be the chocobos, it can't be the summons. Like what is it about this RPG in particular that feels like it fits in the series, if anything, at this stage?
This dinosaur ostrich he's riding?
That's a chocobo. You don't.
I'm just trolling both of you. No, I really didn't know that was a chocobo. I'm not the best one to talk about Final Fantasy.
See, that's a good question. I mean, I think what makes this game distinctly Final Fantasy, I think Final Fantasy as a series has always challenged itself to change to redefine itself and what it is. Either that be like, because when Final Fantasy first, some of the earlier games, it was a very more traditional fantasy setting, but then you have 7, which kind of delves a little bit more into the sort of steampunk aesthetic. changing what we can expect out of Final Fantasy as a series. I think that's what 15 does. Again, that's what I like about it.
It's contemporary. Like
Very
it
contemporary.
It feels like everything is just kind of modern day with, a dash of magic on it.
Totally.
or less.
It definitely asks that question of like, what can a Final Fantasy game be? Well, for 15, like, yeah, a Final Fantasy game can be sort of this long extended road trip that takes place on sort of a huge open world. It can be a game that does tie itself closer to reality. And I think that's what 15, I think it captures a Final Fantasy in general, this desire to kind of change things up, redefine itself throughout the years.
Cool. To get into a couple specifics quick, we're watching combat right now. How did that feel when you were playing? Because you said in your preview you had like an extensive time with that as well.
Combat feels great. I really like it a lot. It's okay. So it's more action focused. It's not like sort of a turn-based battle system that we've seen in sort of previous games.
It's like real time.
Yeah, definitely.
But you can play by pausing it and using menus.
You can actually. I've tried out that mode a little bit because what it does is like in the middle of action, if you don't move, it'll just pause the action, and you have a little time bar that moves that just basically gives you like a limited time to think.
It's almost like
about what to
VATS
do next. A little
from
bit.
Fallout?
Very similar, actually. Yeah.
Okay.
But yeah, the combat system in general it reminds me a lot of like an action game, like sort of a more hardcore action game like Devil May Cry, Bayonetta. Nowhere near as sort of complex as those systems, as demanding, but it definitely gives you a lot of room to be stylish in your combat because you have a lot of different weapons you can equip, different types of weapons that have their own distinct attacks that you can literally switch to on the fly as you're beating up a dude.
Okay. So, but like overall in general, after 15 hours of this, you sound pretty positive on it. You sound like you want to play it again when it releases, what, November
30th.
November 30th,
Yeah, end of
Final Fantasy
November.
15 finally. It got delayed a couple times.
Yeah.
But you sound positive.
Just if I almost spit out water when you said that. This game has been delayed for like 8 years. Yeah.
Yeah.
Just a little.
Well, it's been 10 years in the making now?
Yeah.
Yeah, whatever.
Yeah, overall, like, despite some of the issues I might have had with sort of the fetch quest nature of it all, and even some bits with the story, which I haven't really dabbled upon too much yet, but I am very excited to return to the world. I really want to see what this game has to offer, because it's very promising. There's a lot of different things that make it so distinct of itself, redefining some of the things that I've come to expect from Final Fantasy over the years that, I just really want to dive in and see what happens.
Cool. Awesome. Well, I mean, I don't really play the series, but it looks like something I might want to try out if I have time. Pete, you're probably super excited for this.
I'm pretty excited.
Yeah.
I'm super apprehensive, but I'm excited.
Yeah.
Right. Well, the game actually opens with it's interesting how the game it opens with a message saying like a Final Fantasy for fans and first timers. So it could be part of that first timer lot, man.
Okay. Interesting. Like ideally each sequel would be for first timers as well, but
Yeah, that's true.
Maybe they worked around this time. Cool. That is Final Fantasy 15. You can read our full preview. It's up on site. We have some video content as well, both from Matt Espinelli, and that releases November 30th. So tell us what you think. Are you excited for it? Leave your thoughts in the comments below. Matt Espinelli, thanks so much for coming on, man.
Of course.
I appreciate it. Go play more Final Fantasy or
Oh,
something.
I will.
Yeah.
What about the comments above? No one ever gives any attention to the comments above.
The comments above, that would just throw off the whole flow. I guess it's like what a lot of people do. They go comment before they read everything. This would just facilitate that process.
You should not have taken me seriously.
No, I know,
But I
but
appreciate
I'm trying
it.
to play off it.
Yeah. Oh, whoa!
Eric Tay, what's up?
What up?
What have you been up to?
Dark Souls and Destiny.
You sound tired.
Yeah, I stayed up late playing Dark Souls because I gave up my early review copy to someone on the video team so that they can make content.
You're generous.
And so I basically waited till 9 p.m. For some reason, PlayStation got it last. So last week, Xbox One, somehow it leaked. Dark Souls was available for whatever reason on Friday. Mistakes. And then somehow...
Did you just use 3 fingers for a quotation mark? I thought you used 3.
Yeah. And then...
He's not human. Sorry, that's not going to play well
I
with
got
people
a new
listening. But
quotation. Yeah, I'm sorry.
Yeah, sorry.
But then I started noticing people were playing on PC before 9 p.m. Pacific, which would be 12 a.m. Eastern yesterday. I was like, man, I'm on the last one. I'm just sitting here waiting until 9 o'clock. And so I just played till 1 or 2.
Cool.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, yeah, we are here to talk about the Dark Souls 3, the newest DLC. It releases... When is that actually
It already
released?
is out. Came out last night.
Okay.
At 9.
But it did
Pacific.
leak last week on Xbox One,
Yeah.
you said. Okay, cool. So I guess the main thing I want to know is what is going on in this DLC? Is it worth returning to Dark Souls 3 for in this slew of holiday releases?
Sure. Lore-wise, I can't help you too much because I didn't play too much of the Soul stuff before. but you're pretty much going into Ariandel, if I'm saying that right.
Ariandel,
I guess so.
yeah, something similar.
Yeah, so it's like a snowy place. It's worth it in the sense that, you know, anyone that plays Dark Souls probably wants to play more Dark Souls, right? So, like for me, like not played Dark Souls for so long since, you know, like release, it's that whole like learning how to play again, and then like being frustrated at first because it does kind of what that old Hunters did, where the first couple areas you're just getting swarmed by people instead of like running into like one or two people.
Yeah.
It's just like they're all over the place and you're just like frantically like dodging or rolling around, and then getting frustrated from dying because like you kind of forgot how to play and you don't have the muscle memory. But then ultimately being rewarded once you figure it out again, like, oh yeah, this is why I like Dark Souls, because it's like really fluid and you feel like satisfied and rewarded when you actually like, okay, I learned how he's gonna attack me. I can dodge like 8 wolves now and kill them all and it's fine. But yeah, I mean, it's basically, if you play it, you're gonna want to play it, I guess. If you play Dark Souls, you're probably gonna play Dark Souls 3 DLC.
Right. For people who have played all Dark Souls 3, it might be on like a second or third consecutive playthrough. Is it easy to get to the Ashes of Ariandel DLC? Like how? Because remember, like
It's
old
like
Hunters,
late
you had
game
to go.
content, though, I think.
Right.
Yeah.
What's like the level recommendation?
Sure.
Is there one?
So from what I know, it's that if you're like, say you have a new game and you're just like in your normal just first playthrough, assuming you haven't beat it for some reason, it's about 70 to 80 is about the level you want to be at for the content, the DLC content, and it's actually really easy to get to. You just go to the Cathedral of the Deep, I think. I probably just screwed that up, but like, you know what I mean.
Are you talking about where you fight Vort or the
No,
Dancer of the Boreal Valley?
Neither.
Oh.
It's where you fight the gang mob of priests.
Oh, right, the bottom floor.
Yeah,
of that.
so it is
okay,
the Cathedral of the
yeah.
Deep, right?
Yep.
Okay, so you take that bonfire, and then the moment you get to that bonfire, there's just like a dude that's kind of like to the side that's kind of praying and just talking to himself. You let him go through his little monologue, then you talk to him. He's like, touch this painting, a piece of a painting, and he's like, touch it, come on. And then like all of a sudden, no, he does. Seriously,
Predatory.
That's not a painting, as it turns out.
yeah, seriously. So then, you know, of course you're dumb and you touch it, and then it just like vacuums you into that world somehow.
It's like the Matrix or Alice in Wonderland or the Witcher 3 DLC do the same thing.
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe that's like an easy way to get people into DLC now, is to suck them into paintings or mirrors.
I mean, they did that in Bloodborne too, right? Like the alien just like black holed you into new area.
True, yeah.
So
I guess at a certain point you don't care as much how to get there as like actually getting there.
yeah.
But how long did it take you to finish?
So I haven't beat it. I'm on what I think is the last boss. I'm pretty sure. Like I'm almost positive. It took me about 5 hours, I think, to get to last boss. Granted, again, playing like really late at night and starting to get frustrated. I was trying to like rush through parts, and like that just ate up like 30 to 40 minutes of just being really stupid. Of, you know, you can't rush through some of that stuff.
Yeah, knowing Dark Souls, the last boss could take you anywhere from half an hour to like 2 hours.
Exactly. So I would say the DLC is probably like a 6 to 8, anywhere from like 5 to 8, probably actually rather, depending on how good you are, how like leveled you are. Maybe you're over leveled, you know, or you're just really good at the game. So it just depends, which is fair. I think it's $15 for just this DLC, or you could buy the season pass, which would be both DLCs for $24.99.
Okay.
Yeah.
Watching the gameplay right now, it looks really open. I mean, I remember Old Hunters was a little more open than Bloodborne was, because Bloodborne had the branching paths, as like, you know, the From Software games tend to do. Dark Souls 3, the base game as well, was kind of, there's some open areas like when you get to the woods at the beginning, but it was still also like specific paths you had to take. Is that kind of the case here?
The cool thing about this area is most of it kind of interweaves with each other, which is what Dark Souls 3 did a good job of as well. So it's kind of like you go this way and you're like, oh, I kind of loop back around. And in terms of the areas, they are, for the most part, more like open areas. Like you see this area, there's what happens. I don't want to spoil too much, but it's early, so it's fine. You know, this is kind of like near the start, and you happen to see wolves, and some of them howl, and then guess what? The whole family comes, and you're kind of surrounded. And the wolves, the AI actually is like relatively smart in the sense that as you're running away, they try to circle and they try to cut you off, so that, you know, that kind of pack mentality, I guess, so that they kind of like surround you. But it's intense. There's a couple areas like this that are like really open, and there's just like 3, 4, 5 enemies like surrounding you, so you have to kind of like deal with that properly. But of course, in true Dark Souls fashion, there are also very tight linear paths on like mountains where there's 2 guys in front of you, and guess what? You kind of got to like pull one away, hopefully, and then kill him, and then kill the next guy, and hope that you don't roll off the ledge. I rolled off the ledge or a mountain at least 2 or 3 times, not
But
really
only
knowing
because
my
you were tired and it
surroundings.
was late at night.
No, there was a couple where I just straight up botched because it's like that old Hunters thing. I hate to keep kind of comparing it, but
For those who aren't like completely familiar, Old Hunters is the Bloodborne DLC.
Yeah. So for some reason, some of the enemy types in this, like you think that they're gonna be like running out of stamina after like 3 sets of moves, and he just does like a 4th that doesn't really make sense. Like, oh yeah, I can finally attack you because you straight up did like a jumping smash melee with then follow up 2 melees. He's got to be available. Nope, turns out he just doesn't care and he can keep attacking. So you gotta kind of get used to that too. But in my opinion, there aren't that many enemy types. And so like once you figure them out, there's like a handful, and once you figure them out, it's not so bad. It's more about fighting like multiple like different enemies, I guess, of the few that there are.
A lot of wolves from what I'm seeing right now.
Yeah, there's so if it's not just wolves, then it's like a Viking guy with a wolf, and then you got to deal with both of them.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I really wish they kind of just went down the path where they combined both of them and made one meaty expansion instead
Right.
of separating the DLCs.
This is the first of 2.
Yeah, this is the first of 2, and I don't know. That's just a preference, I guess. I'd rather have more at one time and wait longer than to like play some and be like, okay, now I gotta wait another like 3 months until like the next one comes out. But they did that with Dark Souls too, so.
So I really like the Old Hunters because the bosses were pretty tough. I had a really hard time with some of them, and it actually kind of felt like it was Bloodborne still, but it felt like they did enough new things, and like the world itself is a little more open and weird to like kind of justify me buying that expansion. Is that the case with this, or are you kind of more lukewarm on this, or overall, what are your impressions?
Of the boss fights, I'm not gonna say how many. Of the boss fights I've done, they seem interesting enough. I feel like they're not reinventing the wheel, though. They're not so different, than stuff you've encountered over your Dark Souls career or history of playing these games.
Right.
But there's enough of a like twist that it's like, oh, okay, like this is kind of stressful. And I know that I haven't even gotten to whatever phase that I need to in the last boss I'm fighting, and I know there's some surprises there, so I haven't seen all that. But in terms of just the stuff I played, it's worth $15. I mean, if you're getting 5 to 6, I mean, it's all relative, right? Like what's worth it to you kind of as a consumer. But I think if you're getting 5 to 6 hours of a game that you already enjoy playing, and that's not even me playing the PvP, which they have like 3v3 PvP and stuff like that now, I think it's worth it. I think anyone that plays Dark Souls is probably buying the DLC, right? So
Sure. Yeah, I'm excited to play it. I'm hoping to find time between all these releases coming up. We have a bunch still left before the holidays hit, and then we have a bunch more in the spring. But yeah, 5-6 hours seems like an ideal kind of time. I don't know. That, like you said, $15 seems like agreeable. But that is Ashes of Ariandel DLC for Dark Souls 3. It's $15, but you can buy it as a package for $25 with the next unannounced DLC, and that is out now on PS4, Xbox One, and PC. Eric
Correct.
Tay,
yes.
gonna have to eject you.
Well, where's my substitute player?
Yeah, it's Justin Haywald, chronically late. The last 2 weeks in a row. Today, I specifically told him, I was like, hey, be ready for your segment. In the room.
Look who it is.
He always comes
All
on
right,
high
see you
energy,
guys.
though, so it's hard to be mad. Eric Tay, see you later. Justin Haywald.
Clearance. I couldn't get in the room. It was locked.
We should talk to security about that. We should talk to security about making your
lot
badge
of
not
things. You
work.
mean them letting
We
me
should
in the
talk to
building?
security about why you're allowed in here every day for work.
Why did anyone let me in the first place?
I have no idea. Pete, you were out. I'm sure you saw all the news and the coverage, but we came in early one morning to do Red Dead Redemption 2 live stream and also the Nintendo NX announcement, which turned out it's now Nintendo Switch. Seems super interesting. I want to get your take quick before we get into like what the topic of this is, like what kind of games we want on it. But you're pretty knowledgeable with the tech of consoles and PCs in general. Don't be modest. You know a lot of other stuff. What's your take on the Switch? Are you excited for it?
I am. I don't care that it's not going to be super powered. I care that it's going to be good enough to deliver the kind of games that we're used to from Nintendo, and then whatever else we get from third parties, I hope it's just good enough for their vision to live, even if it doesn't have all the visual flourishes that we get on other consoles or high resolution. That's all fine. I love what Nintendo does because it's always so different. I didn't feel like I got that with the Wii U, and this feels like a genuine shift. Like we've seen attachable controllers for tablets that suck. We've seen other manufacturers try to do similar things, but Nintendo is really good for the most part at delivering interesting tech at the right price with good build quality. Again, I think the Wii U is a bit of a misstep in that regard, but just looking at what they're doing, I think they're on the right path. And I'm pleased to know that they're working with NVIDIA because their Shield tablet, which has been out for a couple of years now and seen a few iterations, has been pretty strong. The tech that they've used in that, they're sort of evolving with some more modern touches to build a semi-custom chip. That should be really strong. Like, I've played Metal Gear Rising on a tablet. So, hey, if I can play Metal Gear Rising on, the NX and it's a cheap game, like, that's cool. So maybe I'll have access to a lot of old games that are really great for a cheap price, get a lot of great Nintendo stuff as well, and truly be able to play like the Wii U made me think I could, remotely or locally at the same time. So I'm excited for all of that. Like, who freaking knows what the games are going to be?
It's more, I think that they have a big reveal coming. And then this is just going to be one form factor. There's also going to be a smaller form factor. It's going to have a built-in camera. It's going to have a built-in microphone. And it's also going to be a phone. That's a joke. I'm just being dumb.
No. But I mean, they have talked about maybe replacing their handheld, down the line. Oh my God.
Eric
That was
Tate to
subtle.
save the day.
Eric Tate just ran in here. Yeah, I mean, I'm always optimistic with Nintendo stuff. And this time I don't think it's unfounded because I've got consoles that are powerful, that are traditional. And I don't necessarily like playing games on my phone, but I love my 3DS. So if this can give me the best of my 3DS and console, I'll be happy.
One more thing about the tech. How will the cartridges affect that as opposed to like the discs of a Wii U? Not much.
Faster loading times.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, storage
More
for...
expensive, harder to replace though. Like,
Yeah, but
Like
less,
if you- if
less
you-
prone
if
to damage.
if a game runs out of stock, and then you have to flash a whole bunch more cartridges versus like, oh, we ran out of stock, let's print a whole bunch more discs. Like, I think that could be problematic.
If only there was a way you could download games from the internet.
Is storage going to be like?
Wait, can the Switch do that?
Storage is going to be a question. Like, how much onboard storage is there going to be? Is it?
I feel like they've got their own like Mark Cerny in there, like who saved Sony a little bit this generation, who's going to save them from making a lot of the not even making inane decisions, but not recognizing the important decisions that had to have been made, especially with like, unified accounts, internet connectivity, like social networking across platforms. I feel like they've probably got storage in mind at this stage. And the flash card thing, like, yeah, you can produce discs easily, but you can also damage them really easily. So it's kind of a toss-up, I think.
I am super excited for it in general. My friend who knows, like, obviously, like Nintendo, Sony, and Xbox, who they are and whatnot, but doesn't necessarily know, like keep up on the news. He was asking me, like, what the Switch is. And at first I was going to say it's kind of like, I was going to say it's like the Wii if you could bring the tablet anywhere, but with, like, detachable controllers and whatnot. But then I was like, it's kind of like a 3DS itself coupled with a home console, but you're playing the game on both. I don't know if that's, like, an accurate description of it.
I mean,
at all.
to distinguish between your phone and a 3DS comes down to features, I think. But really, it's just portable gaming, console gaming that are on parity for the most part, done in a convenient way that doesn't require you jumping through a lot of hoops.
Yeah, that's the thing I want to get into now because we did see a few games that they showed during the presentation. One was like a new 3D Mario game that they just kind of showed it and didn't address it. Also, like one quick thing, they showed Skyrim, but then it came out afterward that Skyrim's not confirmed for the console. How does that even work?
Well, that's Bethesda being, we didn't announce this yet.
Right.
Even if like we have every intention of putting it on this, it's part of that cycle that they put it into. Like, we have the time when we will announce these things. We have not officially announced this game yet, even though you've seen it running on this console. There's also the possibility that Nintendo could have jumped the gun, where they could have talked with Bethesda and said, like, this is something we'd like to put on the system. This is what it'll look like. And they didn't get permission yet.
Just put it on the reel, force their hand.
I love to imagine Todd Howard at home drinking a glass of wine or something, seeing Skyrim spit take all over his TV. That's my game. And then no,
Toddy, what's the matter?
the bastard stole my game. No, yeah. Then like the 3D Mario, what was that? I mean, I'm sure like Nintendo has had some sort of statement about it. Like we're just not announcing it. Nothing. Like they haven't even said like
No.
I mean, it's potential. What we see of that is a very small slice. So I've even seen conjecture that it's just like an endless, like a 3D runner. And it was possible because you're literally just running on a single track. I don't think it will be. I think it will be a full 3D Mario game.
Yeah.
But I think that was also more proof of concept and like an idea.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's hard to say it's a surprise that there's going to be a Mario game on this Nintendo console, but I guess it was the heat and the excitement of the moment like that we saw. We're like, what was that? Because Justin like played Mario far more than I have, and he's like, I don't recognize that level from anything. I thought maybe it's just like 3D Land or whatever, 3D World, whatever the most recent one was, 3D World.
3D World.
But I guess I wanted to talk about like what other kind of ways they could like make cool games for this console. I mean, like however far-fetched you want to get. Like,
well, we know what they're going to do in the beginning. There's going to be a Mario game. There's going to be we know Zelda. Like that's the only actually confirmed title.
Well, Splatoon
is
they showed that.
Is that a port?
Yeah, but there was like, well, I mean, probably a port. There were new hairstyles. Someone got all excited.
No
about
way. Nintendo switch your hair.
Yeah, I think they showed Mario Kart as well on there.
Yeah,
right?
but are these games that are just going to get updates on the Wii U? Or are these full new titles? It felt like what we saw that these were slight modifications on existing games, on Mario Kart 8 and Splatoon.
I feel like someone pointed out in Mario Kart in the preview video that you're able to have two items at once. Yeah. So that's
like graphically, it looked very similar.
Blue
but
shell,
having
blue
two
shell.
items-
First and second place.
You also
Fuck
had
both
King
of you.
Boo.
blue show yourself.
That'd be sick.
Say I just blew myself.
What were you saying just now, Justin?
Well, in a way, those aren't even the things that are interesting. Those are what we expect. We know this is going to come to every Nintendo console. There's going to be a Pokemon game. It's like, what level are they going to take that to? But the thing that I think is interesting to talk about would be third-party titles, and even does that matter? It's been so long since a Nintendo console has had a strong third-party support. And I have a PS4 at home. Most of us have an Xbox One or a PS4 or a PC that plays all of the biggest games that we want to play.
Like Skyrim.
Do we need a Nintendo console to also fill that gap?
No, I mean, we need the Nintendo console to get Nintendo games. And then whatever it does otherwise, that's kind of like the icing on the cake. And I know that sounds really like fanboy-ish, like hey, it's worth it just for Nintendo stuff. But like, I mean, by and large, that's kind of true if you like what they do. Like investing a couple $100 to play their games isn't that big of a leap. So yeah, like I don't think they're going to be able to sell it to anyone but Nintendo fans. Like same problem they've always had, apart from the Wii.
If this is as powerful as an Xbox One and PS, so pure conjecture, we don't know what
It'll probably be close to a PS3.
You think
Xbox 360.
I thought Wii U is pretty close to a PS3.
I mean, they're not terribly far off, but I mean, this will be more powerful than the Wii U.
But I think it would come pretty close to PS4, Xbox One. I think they almost have to.
No, I don't think that's possible. Battery life would not allow that.
Because that's a thing that would make it. I wouldn't say a replacement, but at least something that you might turn to if you're looking at what's the next big game I'm going to get. If you're not someone who's invested in the PlayStation 4 Pro or the Xbox Scorpio.
Sure. But like, so for me, it's a second screen experience thing, right? If you look at, okay, yeah, I can play remote play on my Vita. It's a shitty service. It doesn't work that well. Oh, I can play remote play on my laptop for my PS4. But that's like a big cumbersome laptop, right? To actually have this really easily convertible thing, you just pick it up, you can leave the controllers attached if you want to, but it really does make just playing any game so much easier when you're not relying on your TV. And so if they can deliver like decent performance for games that, sure, maybe they're out already, or they're new games that aren't as high tech, that's still offering something totally different than just purely playing a console game on a TV. Like the Wii U couldn't handle what these games are doing because the gamepad was just a receiver. This gamepad will have the tech in there. So you'll be getting really good experiences on a small screen that's really convenient to play. And when you're done with it, you just plop it on and charge it, play it on the TV. Like that just sounds like such a great scenario to me that I don't think the power is going to be the thing. I think it's the convenience of transforming how you play games.
And I am right in assuming that if you are to take it like on the go as like a more 3DS kind of type thing, it's going to be the same.
You're going to be robbed. People will steal that from you immediately.
Right. But it's also the same game you're playing on the TV. There's no scenario where, I don't know, like in an ideal world, you could be playing a 3D Mario on your TV, like with the home console. Then you go take it as a 3DS and it becomes 2D.
No. I think if anything, you'd see the resolution dip or the frame rate dip, but at the same time, they could also dial back some special effects, maintain the frame rate. But again, a smaller screen, you don't need as much high resolution. So probably.
And I don't think that we're going to see a huge power boost. Like there's been some conjecture that when you put it into the console, at least from what they've shown in the video, when you put it into that base stand, that there could be a graphical improvement of like having extra processing power in the base. And the way they showed it, I don't think that's possible because you're basically hot swapping graphics cards.
In an interview, they said that no, it will not provide more processing power in the base. But if you go back to the battery life thing, they could dial back some of the processing, like literally, kind of like hold back the processor when it's not docked, and then just let the processor work as it should when it has more power and battery life isn't a concern. So technically, yeah, the dock could provide an envelope for better performance, but I'm pretty sure they were on record saying that no, there's not like an extra thing in the base station.
So what's the Switch going to do from a gameplay perspective that the Wii U didn't? Because the Wii U was basically a standalone console. That was my second console, and I played it purely for Nintendo games. And ultimately, it felt like it didn't deliver. Like, what's going to be different about the Switch?
I don't know what will be. What I really hope is that Nintendo deliver, and this is something that most people aren't talking about, they really nail a good operating system for this thing, because people are going to treat this device like a tablet. You couldn't do that with the gamepad. It was cumbersome, it was big, it was low resolution, it didn't have great tech. So this will essentially be a Nintendo tablet, right? If they can, sorry, I lost the specifics of your question. What can they do to...
I mean, what is it that will make this different than the Wii? Like, are there games or titles that would make it different?
Yeah, no, I don't think it's going to be the software that makes a difference. Apart from more third-party games, that is probably going to be the only difference we see here. I really think this is more of a tech move and sort of a twist on concepts that they've dabbled in before, and even just taking mobile gaming and just showing all these companies what they're doing wrong. Like, why hasn't Apple or any Android manufacturer come out with like a really good software platform that works with really good hardware that lets you just focus on games without all the other like BS that comes with working with iOS and Android? Like, Nintendo will really be able to be like, this is the mobile high-tech gaming platform, and it's also your console.
That was the main appeal to me, like watching the trailer and seeing what they're trying to do with it. Is like the 3DS has always worked well for me for local connection over Wi-Fi or whatnot.
Yeah.
That was the most appealing thing to me. I'm not gonna stop playing basketball to play NBA 2K16 like they did in the trailer, but it is cool like to see like 4 people around playing it at, like the console games for all intents and purposes, maybe like downgraded graphics like you said, but within close proximity, as opposed to like having to play over like like almost a LAN party with just these smaller screens.
Yeah,
and that's the most appealing thing to me for. And I'm like thinking through my head like what kind of games, like it's all the first party stuff. It's Mario Kart. It's like the Mario co-op Mario games and whatnot. I don't
better be Metroid.
That's
Metroid.
the one I guess like everybody wants, because the new Zelda, we all played it at E3. I think that was like GameSpot's like unanimous kind of game of the year, and it was awesome. And it seems like it's a return to form in a lot of ways. And I'm curious how they're going to use the Switch to kind of do something new with Zelda, because I feel like Zelda has always been, every Zelda game that comes out, like the first one on each console, is kind of a proof of concept for the console. Skyward Sword finally nailed motion graphics. What was it? Twilight Princess showed that they could sort of be used on the Wii. I'm wondering what they might be doing with Zelda to show the Switch off.
There are some weird patents that Nintendo has handled recently, like one that has like a light projector on the side of the tablet that literally shows people interacting with things, like with light hitting their hand, and then so I think the patent shows someone like throwing a ball towards a screen, and then like their friend being able to actually play it. If that comes true and that's a part of this, there's a lot of weird ass possibilities. But I think really Nintendo is going to focus on just, I hope, making these just good standard games that aren't relying on a gimmick, right? That aren't forcing you to use the gamepad because, hey, look what I can do, right? Like that was such a huge problem for games like Star Fox. Like that was the pinnacle of Nintendo's hubris. And they couldn't even admit it at the time. And I feel like this is a very firm like statement like, okay, we heard you guys. Yeah. Like, here is just a straightforward thing that just uses tech that actually makes it more convenient for you, not to show how clever we are as a company.
Yeah, stop trying to prove yourself and just get out of your own way. When you said Metroid, I assume you mean like a 2D? Or do you like, I love the Prime.
I love Prime.
Too.
No, I just want a good Metroid game. I just want to be back in that world.
Federation Force didn't do it for you?
Well, games that I don't want are split screen multiplayer, and they showed that with that ridiculous NBA basketball demo where he's like, "Oh, we're gonna go play basketball. Now we're all gonna share half a controller and play split screen." Like that seems horrible. Like, well, I'm not gonna split my phone screen and do multiplayer on that.
I'll play Bomberman that way.
Oh, hell
maybe
yeah.
not NBA, but I'd play some games like that.
Yeah, I can't kick bombs at my friend. I can play basketball 5 feet away with them. Not very well, but I can play basketball. I love video games, but the real thing's right next to you. Just go do that. Or go home and play NBA 2K16. I'm just being a curmudgeon right now. But yeah, that is the Nintendo Switch. So those are kind of like our impressions on the tech and the actual what software might come out of it. Let us know what you think in the comments below. Justin Haywald, resident Nintendo geek. No, I'm just kidding. You hate when I call you that. You're critical of Nintendo. I'm just joking.
I'm critical of nothing. I love everything.
Anyway, I'm going to get you out of here on time, unlike you arrived.
And that chair has seen a lot of action today.
All right. Yeah, we've got a new person on for each segment. Here's Rob Handlery.
How are you?
Titanfall 2. I've been dying to talk about this since our review went up. Rob, you and I played a lot of it. You were at the review event with me down in Hollywood.
Yeah, man.
You and I both seem really positive about this game. I gave it a 9 out of 10. I think it's an awesome sequel. I think it's a really fun shooter. I think Respawn nailed it. What do you think?
I think
Your score concurs, man.
With your opinion?
Yeah, I think it's easily one of the best games for me as far as the year goes. Like top game for sure, if not the top. Like Battlefield 1 and Titanfall 2 are like neck and neck as far as like enjoyability, and like Doom even did some work on me. Like I love that game too, but this game is something else. Where just to start off, just the movement in general, like it's addicting. Like I constantly want to move in this world, may it be single player or multiplayer. It's just so fun to play.
Yeah, we talked about this last episode, but if you're a shooter fan, this year is not like doing you any harm. There's Overwatch, there's Doom, there's Battleborn if that was your cup of tea, there's Gears of War 4, there's Battlefield 3, there's Call of Duty coming out, which is doing some interesting things. Yeah, and then Titanfall 2 now. I absolutely love this game. I think in terms of being a sequel, like we talked to Respawn this summer and they told us what their intent was, but to me it really does feel like it is the game that they probably wanted to make back if they had the numbers back in when they formed Respawn and when they released a game in 2013 for the Xbox One. I think in terms of being a sequel, it seems like the changes are minor at first, right? It's these 6 new Titans, which are kind of more hero units in themselves. There's more character to them. They're not these 3 variants like light, medium, heavy. They're not like they have their own set loadouts. You can change them a little bit, but for all intents and purposes, they're almost like superheroes. You see Ion right here with like the laser attacks, and then you'll see Scorch with the flame attacks. You'll see Tone, who's more explosives, and they all have these little quirks that kind of the more you play, the more will come out. And that reminds me of hero shooters or MOBAs, right? You're learning these people. I hate. The phrase is overused all the time, but this game is really easy to learn, but it is difficult to master and start like being really good at it. Obviously, there's 2 layers between the pilots and the Titans. For those unfamiliar with the first game, the pilots, like it still is the game to beat in terms of movement. I know like Black Ops 3 has done it. Advanced Warfare had its own movement system. Call of Duty Infinite Warfare is doing something similar. Overwatch had some characters that could wall run and vault and double jump. But here, like you said, it still just feels unreal. It feels really good. And now that I'm playing like Battlefield, which of course is a slower game, and I love that game, but anytime I play anything else now, I'm just kind of getting like antsy. I want to like ground slide, do a double jump to the wall, and then vault over something and smoke someone.
And in both the campaign and multiplayer, the mobility factor of chaining wall runs and jumps and stuff like that is really rewarding. And I think in actually like 2 different ways. Like multiplayer, I guess both games, when you are chaining these wall runs, you're gaining speed. So when you consider a game mode like Capture the Flag, where you can then combo it with Stim, which just gives you a freaking just a rush of energy and speed, you just can fly across a map dependent on your ability to utilize that traversal aspect. And you can score flags. And if you're good at that, then you are just a valuable runner. And then, we were talking about a handful about single player. The game even says that like when you die, this is not a duck and cover shooter. Mm-hmm. Like when you're playing on a higher difficulty, it says in a death screen menu, it says when you are wall running, you are gaining momentum, you're gaining speed, and that makes you a harder target to hit for enemy AI. So you are just looking at every map in this game, and single player especially at each level, and you're just trying to find just predictable routes. Just how do I get out of this sticky situation? You're given enemies grunts that have these crazy shields. The only way to basically kill them is to get behind them. So then you're comboing your cloak to basically get that wall run and get behind them so they don't see you there, and then you get your kill on that guy. It's just there's so much creativity in how you play that I'm literally playing this campaign again, like for the 3rd time. It's just so fun to play.
Yeah, and people are giving it shit just because it's like 4 or 5 hours, and it is on the short side. You and I were talking about you should definitely play if you're pretty experienced with shooters. I played it on hardened, like the third tier up, and I still only died like 5-6 times maybe throughout the 4.5-5 hour campaign. The campaign doesn't feel tacked on though. It feels like they put a lot of work into it despite its length. I didn't like the writing at all. Like Pete, you played the first few minutes and that intro scene, like a pilot and his Titan. It was really ham-fisted, and I was like, we get it.
Most valuable soldier on the battlefield.
Yeah, the dude with the cigar in his mouth and just drunk somewhere in the Appalachians.
But all that
just
aside,
talking.
yeah, like you guys have talked about some stuff that sounds really interesting, like between Titan and pilot, like the sort of relationship that develops. That sounds kind of interesting to me. I still haven't gotten that far yet.
The bright spots in the plot and the writing are definitely between your Titan BT-7274, who has a personality. He's a sentient thing, but he also, despite how smart he is, he doesn't understand human phrases. So Jack Cooper, the main character, would be like, you missed me or something. Or did you miss me? And he's like, I wasn't shooting at you. That'd be a violation of my protocol or something. How can I miss you? And he's like, never mind. And those
never mind.
can get funny, but I feel like the writing relies too much on that. And then the villains themselves are the most outlandish, just villains.
I really like
after
that
a while,
aspect.
they lean into it, but it's still, there were other parts where the campaign was trying to be really serious. I was like, what are you going for with this narrative? But in terms of design, speaking of those villains, they're like boss fights. And then the missions are constantly changing up how it's using the pilot movement, the pilot combat, how the Titan combat is figuring into it. You see BT's throwing you right here. Really good platforming throughout the game. This section kind of becomes more of a puzzle platformer almost, mixed with a shooter. And there's one mission that I wish we could talk about. You were talking about flanking, guys, and like kind of manipulating your environment. I really wish we could talk about it more. People play it. It's like 3/4 of the way through the campaign, but it's just a mechanic that comes out of nowhere, and you're like, what is this doing? And then you start to slowly understand it. My point being, I don't want to spoil that, the campaign is paced really well. You'll get into these like mid-air ship battles where you're jumping from ship to ship. Your Titan will factor into it. Your Titan itself, BT, unlike the Titans from multiplayer, you could switch on the fly once you collect them all. You can't go back and replay the campaign with all the loadouts, which sucks. You still get them at certain intervals, certain spots in each mission, but you just press right on the D-pad and you switch to Scorch depending on the situation. There's a kind of a reaction, like a dynamism that you don't have in multiplayer because you can't walk into a firefight and be like, shit, North Star, the sniper would be better for this situation rather than Legion, the minigun wielding one. That became really fun, especially during boss fights. Like I think I killed one boss using 4 different Titans, which is Titan loadouts. Sorry, same Titan, but different loadouts.
And sometimes it really requires it. Like, especially on a harder difficulty, I found certain bosses you have to predict, right? A Scorch, for instance, a Scorch boss would coat the area with fire. Maybe I should step back and use a North Star type and snipe him. And then you'll get a different, and then you grow accustomed to that tactic, right? But then the next level or match, you're faced with another Titan who's doing the exact opposite. So you're forced to switch your loadouts. And again, on the fly, many of times you're just throwing a situation North Star is another good example of someone who doesn't have any defense. So then you're switching around and you're throwing a tone shield down in order to snipe through. It's just, you're going back and forth in a very up-paced manner that's keeping you really engaged and thinking ahead.
Yeah, and despite the fact that you can't switch loadouts on the fly in multiplayer unless you're respawning or whatever, there is a certain visual vocabulary to this now. It's almost like I keep talking about MOBAs or hero shooters. I interviewed Vince Zampella back at E3. He's the CEO of Respawn. He used to be called Infinity Ward and whatnot. He was saying they actually looked at fighting games in terms of how you want to fight. Obviously, it's going to be very different, but with Overwatch, you recognize that that's a Zarya coming around the corner. You should probably be ready for her Graviton Surge or something. You learn the Titans not just to know how to attack with them, but also how to counter them and how to exploit their weaknesses, which is a huge deal in this game. And that's what I really love about these Titans. If you see, you'll recognize Scorch. If you don't recognize his body itself, which is very distinct from the others, he's not skinny. He's this big, huge dude with a kind of oil tank on his back, whatever it is, thermite tank on his back.
He almost looks like a BioShock Big Daddy.
Totally. That's actually what I was going to say the other day when I saw him. But then you have North Star, who's skinny but has these 4 prongs, jetpack coming off, and you immediately recognize that if it's
silhouettes.
If it's a Scorch, and if you're Ronin and you have a sword, you should probably get up close to Scorch before he can coat the area in flames to kind of push you away. If you're a Scorch and you see a North Star, you should probably try to get behind cover and lob your artillery over these things instead. But that's what I really love about this multiplayer. It seems like a minor change to just switch up the classes, but it results in these ripple effects that kind of create this really kind of cool gameplay loop between not just between Pilot and Titan, but also just the Titans themselves.
And speaking of the MOBA element, I think that's so strong in the game type Last Titan Standing.
Definitely.
Where it's just 5v5.
People are so cautious there.
You get that same element too of you see everyone's choice for Titan. You all can't be Ronins. You're going to get crushed. Someone can counter that, but you can, as rounds progress, you can kind of move around. But you want that tone who can throw down basically a shield for everyone to use in lanes. Mm-hmm. You want someone to basically sneak around and flank like a Ronin. You kind of can work around that, and it gets really competitive. That mode, and that's a mode that I never really. That wasn't the first game, right? I believe it was.
Last Titan Standing, yeah.
Yeah, of course. And I never really play that. Attrition and another one, and even Bounty Hunt is another look.
Bounty Hunt's great.
Yeah.
Bounty Hunt, to paint a picture, it's each time you kill grunts. So there's not AI in every mode. I know people were worried about that. People who didn't like the AI. If you're just playing skirmish, there's no grunts. It's just pilots and Titans. There's pilot versus pilot mode now, just like the movement, the more Call of Duty-ish combat. But Bounty Hunt's great because, and this is one of those modes that like kind of like makes you reconsider how to play the game. You gain money by killing grunts and other pilots and titans, but then you can save it up. If someone kills you, they get half your money into their like wallet or whatever. But then at a certain point in the match, at the end of each wave of grunts, 3 or 4 banks will open up and everybody's rushing to deposit, and you have to hold X and your money will drain. So you're not automatically going to put all your money into it. So you have to get out your Titan to do that. You have to be a pilot. So
that's the best part about the whole thing.
Because there will be other pilots who are jerks like me who will camp out and watch these banks and wait for pilots to just come in and deposit like $750 and get half of whatever that is for killing them and then go deposit my own.
If you didn't make any money, that's your goal now, is to prevent people from doing that.
Yeah. And also there's, what's the other one? Yeah, like pilot versus pilot feels great, but I mean, like watching this footage to go back to what I love about this game, the first Titanfall, people got burnt out, and I know like they were trying to figure out how they could kind of give it more vitality, longevity in the long run, and it's not always cranked up to 11. There are these calm moments where you're like making a plan and trying to figure out what to do next, and the maps are pretty wide open this time around. First one had some bigger maps, but these in general are, facilitate both pilot and Titan combat, but you keep playing, and the more I play, the more I learn. Like Tone, the who's kind of like a Call of Duty-ish Titan, he's got this regular marksman explosive rifle and shoulder-mounted missiles. But you have to, instead of just like hovering your reticle over someone to lock on, you have to actually attack them. So I think the base one is you have to hit them 3 times with your gun. But then you find out that this sonar thing you could shoot also automatically gets you 1 tick toward locking on to shoot your missiles. And then Ion, Rob, neither you nor I knew that all of her attacks, the Titan's a she, will feed into one central power core. So if you're just firing your gun's alternate fire, that's taking away from what you could be using with your shoulder-mounted laser.
Right.
And
It's
then
like one
obviously
mutual cooldown that you have to manage.
and there are these weird little wrinkles with each Titan that actually kind of make you play a certain way. And then obviously North Star being like the glass cannon, if you hover, it's kind of like Pharah from Overwatch. You can hover and shoot missiles downward at Titans or pilots alike. There is a certain amount of trepidation when you're about to, because you're like, I could get really fucked up if there's 3 North Stars on the other side of the map about to shoot me.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have Ronin, like these little each Titan can add an extra dash to their loadout.
Yeah.
Ronin starts with 2, so if you add that 3rd dash, and then you have the phase shift, which is when Ronin goes into like another reality and then appears like somewhere like 30 feet away. I came around the corner in Last Titan Standing, and I saw a North Star at the other end. I'm like, shit. I dodged to the right, I dashed to the left, dashed again, and then I used Phase Warp, and I was right next to it. That wouldn't have been possible if I didn't change my loadout like that.
Right.
That's not something I would consider until I actually played a lot of Ronin.
And that's what I think is also really nice, is because that you're getting those hero shooter elements of recognizing an enemy and knowing how to handle it. However, you'd still get that customizable aspect to meet your play style. So for Ronin, yes, you have high mobility. Well, you know what? I'm going to go all out. I'm going to add that other dash, and I'm going to focus on basically getting to someone quick enough. Or North Star, extremely weak, no defense. I can add another tether to slow people down, but you know what? I'm just going to go all out and just, make a more powerful Titan. So yeah, that's really fun. And to experiment with some of these, and some of these are really what come off as really big game changers. Like give 20% more to your core ability.
Right.
So if you have a favorite core ability, damn, you're getting that much quicker, and it's just more effective. I don't know. I can't wait to, and that's where I hope to see the longevity of the game, is like getting these unlocks later on and then being able to master them down the road. Obviously there are other gimmicks that are appealing, like skins and such. There's something about putting some sick ass teeth on. It's
Like a
war
Spitfire
paint.
from World War II?
Yeah, it's war paint. Like some of them are just teeth that go up past your ear. Like if I was a North Star hovering over you and you see that, I'd wet myself.
And that's it kind of speaks to how attached you get to these Titans, that you actually care about aesthetic stuff. Like I don't know, like Overwatch is another example. All the unlocks in Overwatch are aesthetic.
Yeah.
And that's because I think you care about these characters. But yeah, and then like you just mentioned, they have a progression system now as opposed to just the burn cards in the first game. And it's pretty steady from when you and I played. I think I played about a few more than 20 hours total of multiplayer between the review event and this past week before it went live. Servers should go back up Thursday, when it releases way out east. And then we'll get to play more. I'm really excited too.
Yeah, and just to tap on again, they did a nice thing with the burn cards. I was never a huge fan of those burn cards because you're just given so many at such a high rate that
Was anyone a fan of those?
I don't know. I mean, I guess burn cards in general. I'm not a big fan of them, but But the amount of cards you're getting, it was hard to manage, and you found yourself going through them all. I feel like they did a nice thing of basically taking, the burn cards and putting them into the pilot boost. So as you progress, once you get to level 50, you can get these really cool ones like, just I have to say, Tracer's Time Warp back. You know what I mean? Like you're getting these abilities later on that you want to get to, and what seems to be a nice ways away, which makes the game, hopefully, long term for people.
Definitely, it's also cool, like mixing and matching the pilot loadouts with the Titans. Like this pilot, like having cloak, and also there's that Titan ability where you eject when it's about to explode. You'll automatically cloak, so people can't just immediately pick the other one out of the air like you did to me earlier on in this segment. I was laughing because while you were talking behind you, I saw the footage. You smoked me with North Star. But anyway, yeah, that's Titanfall 2. The review is up on site. I gave it a 9 out of 10. I really like this game. Battlefield 1 is great. Call of Duty, I'm curious about, but I would encourage you not to ignore Titanfall 2. It releases October 28th on PS4, Xbox One, and PC. Well, that's the show, gentlemen. That was kind of I don't know, we've been going past like 3 lately. I don't care. We don't have to consign it to an hour.
Whatever.
Yeah, Pete's back.
I'm back.
He'll be back next week as well. He's back! Halloween's coming up. Do you guys have plans? You going to a party? What are you being for Halloween? Do you know, Rob?
I'm a huge Halloween fan, and I go all out with my costumes. One of the last ones I was a giant snail.
But that was years ago, Rob.
was 2 years
You're living
ago.
in the past.
Okay, last year I was a luchador. I was pretty fun.
Oh, I remember that.
But I think I got one coming up. I don't want to spoil it, but
Okay.
it's going to require some late night
Oh, shit.
tinkering and tailoring.
I've got a group one planned with a few people here. I think I'm going out of town for the weekend, but I'll be here for Friday. We were considering dressing up for the lobby, but it wouldn't have made sense. Like Halloween's a week from yesterday? I'm getting excited about Halloween. I really like Halloween. Pete,
Cool.
you don't seem like a costume person.
What does that mean?
You just told me this morning you're not a costume
No,
person.
but you said I don't seem like one, so
You're not a costume person, factually.
There you go. I wish I was. I really freaking wish I was, but I don't know, man. I lack the energy. I lack the ambition.
Oh, I'm losing the energy as well, man. I'm getting like closer and closer to the deadline of like, what the hell am I going to be?
Yeah.
I don't know. Forgive me for finding joy in holidays still. I guess I'm not jaded.
You did rely on someone else to buy your costume for you.
Oh, shit. All right, whatever. Trash talk is over. That's our show. Thanks so much for joining us for about an hour and 15 minutes. It was a little bit long, but whatever. We'll see you next week at 2 p.m. Pacific on the lobby again. See ya.